Adam, we're in different positions. I'm in the captain's seat.
What are you doing over there?
I don't know. The captain's not here.
You're in the wrong place. We're missing someone.
That's what it is.
Oh, wow. Well, you just get us this week. We're missing the Michael Lee, but hopefully he'll be back with us next week.
We watched that big game. I think I told you about it last week, Adam.
Was the football game?
Yeah, those Chiefs. They took it, right? Like you told me they were going to take it.
Yeah, they totally did.
They totally forgot to show up.
If they had shown up for the game, they probably would have taken it.
It was the wrong group of refs. It was the Eagles refs this time, right?
I was told the whole thing was fixed and it would be fine.
Yep.
So,
well, the Eagles took it. I always bet on the defense. That's what I looked at when I was betting on the teams. I know Mahomes was good and all that, but not this time.
Not this time.
The defense for those Philadelphia Eagles showed up. Yep. I've also learned that you can spell Eagles multiple ways, mostly wrong.
Eggleses?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They call them the birds. The birds are the birdies, I think.
The birdies.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you spell birds multiple ways?
Yes. If you just use the name of every single bird out there.
Bird is a word.
All right, the bird is the word. What else? The Jets were playing? Jets are important, Adam. You want to bring that up? We like to talk about those Jets.
We always gotta check in with them. They're having a good year. How are they doing this week? They ended I guess the break that they're gonna have for this Four Nations thing.
Here's some information on the Jets that we recently had. There was a bunch of trades going on, or interest on trades, I should say.
Yeah, there hasn't been much movement on trades with the Jets so far, but
they're interested in some people from Philly. That's where the winners are.
I guess the trade deadline's coming up, so people are interested to see what they're gonna do to bolster a already very strong team.
Yeah.
So
56 games, I think, right?
Something like that.
56 to 53 is the next highest for the Jets. They're in the top of the bracket.
They are up there, and they'll probably want to do something to strengthen their playoff run.
What would do that? Do you have any idea?
I don't. It's a tough call because at this point, to get something, you got to give something, and their formula is working pretty well. I don't know who you'd want to give away. I guess you'd give away draft picks, and you'd mortgage the future, basically, to get a little more now.
Yeah, that's usually how trades work. I don't know. I like the team the way it's performing. I really think that this is left to the experts on this matter. The coaching experts.
Chevy will have to figure this one out.
Yep. And speaking of Chevys and Fords, let's move on to another segment, Adam.
What are we going to talk about now?
Yeah.
There's a Ford right there. What's that Ford been up to this week? I'll tell you what he's been up to this week. I don't know if it's this week, but anyways.
Doug Ford, yeah, that's the Ford we're talking about, going from the coach to the Premier of Ontario. Doug Ford leads an Ontario election.
Doug Ford is having an election because he wants a strong mandate to deal with Trump in the U.S., allegedly. Do you think that's the reason?
Do I think that's the reason that he's having an election
right now?
Yeah, I would concur on that. We've in Canada here been calling for election federally for a while.
We have,
because we want to mandate it. Like, we want to know what the people actually want. That's what they mean when they say have a mandate. We want to know what the people want to have in terms of a government, and the best thing to do is have an election, have the parties put out their platforms and their ideas, and then vote on them, and then see how many of that party gets into power, or whoever it is, and Doug Ford wants to just kind of know. He wants to know. Doesn't he want to know, or does he think that there's some kind of alternate thing that could happen in Ontario?
I don't know. I guess his numbers are doing pretty well. He's polling pretty strong at the moment, so it seems like a good moment to both get a strong mandate for the whatever the fight's going to be with the U.S. and also secure another 4 years as premier. He would definitely not be the first politician to be accused of calling an election at a time that favors him. So, that's just kind of how it works in our system when the leaders can call the election whenever they want. So
obviously, they got this new poll out here, which says 47% of Ontarians say they've decided to vote, and the leaning is in his favor. So obviously, that's part of the underlying reason of why they would now be choosing to.
It's not a terrible idea, right? Because there's going to be decisions made at the provincial and federal level over the next, especially I think over the next year or two,
for sure,
that will have pretty heavy consequences that could be felt for quite a while. So it's not a terrible idea to have an election, let the different leaders put their ideas out there and have the people pick the one that they want to go forward with, right? It's it helps you get an idea on the direction you want to go.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we had an election here a little while back, and we haven't had one since.
That's how that works, yeah.
Yep.
Thanks for explaining that.
But I would like to say I was recently watching another YouTuber chat, and I think I sent you that video. They had a former Blue Bomber on there, Abi Khan.
Yeah, you were telling me about this.
Yeah.
Why don't you fill me and the audience in a little bit on how that chat went?
It was quite good. It was very opening onto who Abi Khan really is, and I kind of got some of his ideals and his discussions. He seems pretty level-headed. I do like him. He is conservative. He is actually running for the leadership of the Manitoba Conservative government here, or not government, party, because who stepped down?
Who stepped down?
Yeah.
Heather Stephenson.
Yeah.
That was a while ago. I had to think for a second.
Yeah, that's true. So they haven't actually had an official leader. They have an interim leader. So they are coming up for elections of the Conservative Party of Manitoba. What do they call it? Is it the Manitoba Conservatives? I can't even remember.
I don't think they're not the Progressive Conservatives anymore.
Yeah.
Are they?
No, it's the Conservative Party of Canada and just, I think
Or is it the Progressive Conservatives?
Well, you know what?
You better pull that up.
If you guys want to vote for the new leader of that party, the only way you can do so is pay some $20, and apparently they'll give you a rebate, like $15. So you'll get a portion of your membership fees back, but then you'll be able to get a ballot. And a lot of people did that last time when Heather Stephenson was running, and there was a close call. But the thing is,
some of us didn't want her to be the leader, and then some of us were proven right.
Correct. But now we have Abi Khan, probably the leading candidate. I'm not entirely sure. The election hasn't even been called yet for them, but they have a kind of a rough set date of when it's going to be. But mostly they're trying to get these party memberships up so that they can get, obviously, funding first, but then they're going to want to get their ballots out and actually have a nice, clean election where they can have a bunch of people and kind of another mandate in the sense there.
Well, they need to get on that, right? Because whoever is going to be the leader, they need to have some time to get some recognition and get a platform together before Manitoba's next election comes along. So, if they can get a leader going and a platform, whatnot, we're still a few years away. So they'll have lots of time to get out there, get their name out there, and have Manitobans start to learn who they are and what they stand for. So it's tough to just win and then go right into an election. As some federal liberals might be trying to do, but there he is. There's Abi for a better Manitoba.
Yeah, this is the guy we're talking about.
So has he talked much about what his platform is going to be, or is he still just giving sort of a vague sense like politicians normally do when the election is fairly far out?
Exactly. You got the point there. He has not much on this website of his here about what his platform will be. The discussions I've seen recently on Abi Khan are kind of about his ideas. And one of the most interesting concepts that he had discussed is about implementation of projects that provincial governments usually overtake. And I'd like to just...
What kind of projects?
Discuss that for a second. He, as all parties are when they are in opposition, was being critical of this NDP, current NDP, and the upcoming or the previous NDP, I should say, when the NDP, who was it before? Not Sellinger. Was it Sellinger? I guess it was Sellinger.
That was a while back.
That's what I'm saying. The previous NDP.
Yeah.
He's criticizing that previous government. Obviously, he's not going to criticize his own conservative government too much, but he probably should, because it's always good to.
They needed to be criticized a little bit.
And if you're not in that government and you were simply just a member of the party, rightfully, I think you should be able to criticize them because you weren't part of that organization. I mean, you can always criticize yourself too, but the thing here is, he's conservative, and conservatives obviously are always concerned about the implementation of any provincial projects, mostly on a fiscal sense, because it's crucial to determine a project based off of what we can actually afford. And this was part of the platform and discussion between conservatives and NDPs and what we've had in our voters here. I recently discovered here in Transcona that there's a big election promise basically coming up. It wasn't phrased like that, but the only care home in this area where we live here, or at least where I live, where you used to live, Adam.
I used to live here.
But there's like 80,000 people or something in Transcona.
It's a big part of the city for sure.
Yeah, and there's only one care home, and our aging population needs it. So the health minister showed up to Park Manor Care and made a beautiful speech saying they're going to increase the platform or the care home 90 beds, extra beds. It was like, okay, cool. It used to be 120 beds that was suggested by the previous plans, which was almost a decade ago. So
give us some perspective. How many are there now?
Yeah, currently there's 100 beds.
So it's almost going to double in size.
Yeah, and the previous conservative government, they did note lost beds. They make it seem like the critics or the government made it seem like it was under mostly their decision making, but it was really mostly from the closure of one specifically large care home that couldn't manage its infrastructure anymore. But regardless of those facts, the NDP had showed up in Transcona and made the promise that they're going to make 90 instead of 120 beds. And they're going to eventually build this thing, or at least shovels in the ground, by the end of the year. And so they promise. I don't believe it, because you know what? I'm an old guy who's already seen it promised once time before and pushed back.
Well, you're not
NDP.
You're not that old, but let's face it. I mean, this will be good for you when you are old and you have to go live in a care home.
Well, I'm mostly getting to the point on this. Like, yeah, it would be good. I'm not going to deny the fact that if this current government actually gets it done, it could be good for the people. Where this topic is all in relations to Abi Khan's criticism, which I thought was fair. The previous NDP government tried the entire time that they were in office to get this care home built and never succeeded. Had to take it back to the drawing boards because they were critical of the drawings and designs a whole bunch, and never actually implemented. And then what happened was basically a conservative government took over, and they wanted to build the project too. However, being fiscally conservative, they looked at metrics which maybe wasn't the best, and they decided that, you know what, it seems cheaper from some of these metrics we're seeing that care homes should be built at a metric, a statistic of like 100 and something, 110 to $150,000 per bed that you're getting, versus projects that may actually be costing you like $300,000 per bed.
Well, how does that get affected though when you have inflation and whatnot and things get more expensive?
It will totally affect it, but all I'm saying is from the outcome of the conservative government that we just previously had, they're looking at it thinking, well, we can actually get more bang for our buck if we pay out like around $110,000 or something per bed over this project that's 300. So obviously there was a disagreement and the project ended up getting canned.
Well, that's a lot of cut though, like to go from 300 to 110 per bed.
Yeah. Well,
are you really going to get a quality product out of that? Yeah,
that's part of the issue. Was it a good case study based off of the previous two governments? Probably not, but this is the way governments... The NDP initiated these studies, and they initiated this project that never got off the ground. I can fully understand, based off this one real-life situation here in Transcona, where they basically say, hey, you know what, we were making this big promise. They came out here now saying there's $72 million, and they're going to build this care home by 2028 and shovels will be in the ground. No, that's not going to happen. Nobody knows about it except for this government that made the promise just randomly out of their butts. So
that's what politicians do, though.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why, as you mentioned previously, we should criticize them when they say things and do otherwise. It's up to us to keep them accountable.
Yeah, and so to Abhi Khan's point, maybe making better decisions, having better decision-making processes, as he was talking about in this one interview that I said, hey, I'm willing to listen to this, explain it more, take better control of the media and get your message out there, Abhi, because I would actually like to hear it. But to the point of the NDP that are currently sitting here making promises, I want to make one other point. Adam, do you know why they showed up in Transcona with 80,000 something people to say that there will be that care home that you guys heard about for a long time?
Are they a little bit concerned about some sort of upcoming election?
That is correct. We unfortunately lost an MLA here in Transcona, Nello Altamar, and he was a loved guy. But the thing is, life moves on. Unfortunately, that means a by-election will be happening. So prior to that by-election being announced, a big promise was made that was in the hearts of a lot of Transconians here. So
Transconians.
That's basically the clarity of the whole promise that we're getting here. It's a election promise. It's not a real thing. It's an election promise. It might happen. I'm not going to be negative, but a realist will tell you they're only coming here making this promise with no actual plans in place because they want to retain the seat that Nello Altamar had originally held.
So your viewpoint is this is all talk and it's not actually going to happen.
Thank you for asking.
Won't be a thing.
Listen, the regional health authority and the care home itself are likely both to be on board. You know, they have been talking about it. Organizations have been excited about it for a long time. Getting the funding was difficult because, you know what it was? It was a partnership between the federal government, the provincial government, and the municipal / the organization, all to raise portions of this fund. That never got it off the ground. Manitoba Health is run by the Manitoba government. They should, at basically, as it is with most of the situations in all our care places, they do the funding. So why not let Manitoba government take over? And that's what they're promising here. They're promising $72 million, build this place, they'll fund it all. So great, that will be great. But the reality of this situation is it's just a promise at this point. Nobody knows anything about what's going on, and nothing is going on right now. So it's a promise. That's all it is. Politicians make promises. I don't like it. I like it when they actually have something solid to say and do, because don't make everybody look bad with your like let me ask you, Adam, how do you feel when you hear these promises? Do you get worked up? Do you get excited? Do you like hearing it? And then does the realistic side come into place of you? Like, do you actually believe in these people?
Well, that's a good question, Josh. What commonly seems to happen is we'll have a government come out and they'll promise something and people will be hyped about it. And, you know, it'll be either a good idea or a bad one. But if it is a good idea, but it comes with larger costs or other, maybe it's environmental implications or something like that, what we'll see is very little happens, as you're saying, for quite a number of years. It gets kicked down the road, and then they will re-announce it over and over again like it's a new announcement, hoping people aren't really paying attention. But you know, in the town that I live in, there's a recreational center being built there, and I think they're finally shovels in the ground. But it was announced probably at least 3 or 4 times by I think several different governments that this was going to be done. So, you know, that's kind of to your point. There's a lot of talk, and it takes way too long to get these things started.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and.
But on that note, what's your prediction for this care home? They're saying 2028. What's your prediction right now? Just what do you think is going to happen?
Honestly, I not even putting any effort into predicting it. Like this is the way
It's okay to be wrong. Just say what you think's going to happen.
The way I see it happening is I see it just being like you're saying. It's just going to be a promise that they're going to just keep repeating because.
But they've already been doing that for a few years, like for quite a few years.
They can keep doing it. Like,
well, eventually
nobody's holding them accountable. They're like, yeah, the NDP are going to do this and that. Yeah, just do it already then. Like, make it happen. Go and get yourself an engineering firm. Go and get yourself a construction manager and start the process. Open the negotiations. Talk to the regional health authority. Talk to the organization that you're trying to build a facility for and just, like, make meetings happen and start doing it, you know?
So you won't give me a prediction? No, you won't just be like, I think this will happen.
I think Casper will bark at me if I start giving a prediction, but...
Well, that's why he's here.
Well, hello.
There you are, Casper.
His prediction is it ain't happening anytime soon.
Yeah, probably not.
So what were we talking about? Yeah, besides promises, Adam, that our Manitoba government is making, I have another set of promises here that I want to bring up here. Boom.
Boom goes the dynamite.
Which leader Canadians prefer to negotiate with Donald Trump? So there's new nanos polling out, Adam. Have you been paying attention to this story?
I have been, yes. I've been hearing a lot about it.
Yeah, basically, the Conservatives were taking away a big lead.
20 plus points?
In polling for a new federal government. And now there's a cut to that number. And based off of this liberal leadership thing we've been talking about, what is the idea here?
Well, it seems to be that some more recent polling is showing the Liberals are creeping back up. The Conservative support is still fairly high, but it is coming down. So now we're getting a lot of headlines telling us that, maybe the Liberals are not as far back as we thought they were, and maybe they're going to have a big comeback, and we should be afraid that they're going to come and win the next election on us.
Afraid? I don't know. I might be afraid if the way we're talking about these current Liberals. It's better, I guess, to have a banker instead of a politician, they are saying.
Is it?
Mark Carney's taken about 40% of the opinion poll here done by your lefty,
This is CTV News, so yeah. Let's take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah, 40% of Canadians supposedly would prefer Mark Carney, the banker and non-elected possible head leader of the party, the Liberal Party, to be a preferred candidate in negotiations over the likely next Prime Minister, Pierre Poilievre, at 26. And the big number there for Chrystia Freeland and Karina Gould. Have
we figured out who Karina Gould is?
Yeah, she's that House leader. We don't really care. We don't think she's going to win. She's just putting her name in for the leadership thing eventually. But the thing we're talking about here, Adam.
Yeah, I would like to just weigh in on this because when I'm preparing the outlines for these podcasts, I go through a lot of different articles and videos, and I spend quite a bit of time looking into it, and I find, due to the fact that a lot of our media is left-wing biased,
okay,
there is a lot out there. Basically, some very I would say not. Well, what it is it's content that leads you to an opinion. So essentially, they start by stating, Carney is an economist, he's a banker, he's an outsider, all this stuff, and then they proceed to tell you why. That's just better than the alternative in this case. Pierre Poilievre, who's spent his life in politics in Canada, and they just sort of go on the assumption that banker good, career politician bad, and they don't really spend any time explaining the advantages to someone who has spent their career as a Canadian politician. They sort of just hand wave over it like it's a bad thing, and then they put a whole bunch of effort into telling you why having a banker, non-politician is obviously the best way to solve every problem. So I find that frustrating because there's obviously advantages as well to someone who has spent their career navigating, the halls of politics in Canada, who knows, the ins and outs and how to get things done. They've seen what works and what doesn't work, but you never see that on display as something that could be an advantage for the leader of a country. And I think that is important.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, obviously, you can look to American politics here and determine that when that previous unprofessional, what do you call it? What would you say? Unknowingly non-political guy took office the first time. He struggled to get things done. Having the experience now, he's getting things done down there in a different manner. But the point is, yeah, politicians that actually have some skin in the game have more experience and they'll get stuff done. But who's to say? I'm under the impression, Adam, that Carney basically underwrote half of the government policy and economic policy anyways.
Yeah, it's
he might have more experience than we think, and we might have to hold him more accountable for what we're seeing these days.
Oh, by the way, guys, if you like this content, please share it with someone else that would like it as well.
Yeah, so we were talking about his experience apparently building economies, making him better than someone who has spent their life in the Canadian political system.
Well, is that true? Has he been building economies? Because if that's the case, and the way Canadian economy is right now, I don't like it. I don't like what I'm seeing. I don't like the way the economy is going. I don't like all the taxes. I don't like Mark Carney.
Yeah, we're being led to believe that he is just a better option because he's been the head of the Bank of Canada. He's been the head of the Bank of England, and he's not a politician. And to me, these are not reasons that make you good at running a country. You won't be good at figuring out what people need and balancing budgets that have to satisfy many different requirements. Like when you're the head of the Bank of Canada, you basically look at inflation and decide if you should raise the rate up and down. You have you have essentially one lever that you can pull, and yes, they have to consider a lot of data to decide how to pull that lever, but leading a country is a whole nother thing. There are endless amounts of levers you can pull, and you have to have some kind of idea how that will impact people across a very large diverse country in all walks of life. And I don't think that the reasons that we have been presented why Mark Carney will obviously be the better option, I don't think they're valid. And I think someone who has spent almost 30 years being part of legislation and policy to move the country and move the provinces forward, you're not always going to agree with every policy that one person has, and maybe they sometimes have to vote certain ways that they don't necessarily agree with because of the way Canadian politics works. But I think that someone who has been in the game for all that time, and we can tell from what Poilievre says that he is aware of the problems that Canada is facing, and I think that he would be the better choice to figure out how to fix some of those issues.
Yeah, I agree with you, Adam. I think that we're seeing the left-wing bias at work in the media, and I don't think it's fair. I think we need to be able to look at the platforms provided by leaders and determine what we're seeing. And right now we're seeing, as you said, conservative Pierre Poilievre showing us a platform and ideas and concepts with less taxes and all that Canadians may enjoy a lot more. Well, we have obviously a leadership crisis in the Liberal Party, and we're seeing that we're gonna probably have this Mark Carney as the leader. Like, it's basically kind of just being crowned to us by the news organizations that get over $1 billion of funding from the federal government. So maybe that has to do with something. I wouldn't put it past it.
And he's being presented to us like he's some kind of savior, and we've never even elected him to do anything, and if he wins this leadership race, he's suddenly going to be prime minister of the country. I don't like anything about this. I hope that we get our election right away. I hope he at least has the decency to be like, I wasn't elected here, and if I am going to be the one to move forward and represent this 41 million people, I should probably win an election, or at least win a seat.
Like we talked about with Doug Ford.
Yeah, exactly.
Call an election, get a mandate. As much as we don't like the things that we're seeing happening to Canadians from the American side, unfortunately, he has a mandate based off the popular vote that he's had from the people down in the States. Doug Ford is asking for the same thing. Why can't we have it here in Canada? Just get the proper frickin' election going so we can have a mandate from Canadians across the country to say what government we want and what ideas we really want, I that's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, and going back to the poll that we're looking at here, actually there was some new polling today, but based on what we're seeing in this article here, a lot of the support that the Liberals are getting is coming from the NDP. And I read as well that they have had a pretty strong resurgence in Quebec, which is a bit of a threat to the Bloc Québécois over there. And I think that maybe that's got something to do with the fact that the Bloc is a separatist party, and people are realizing right now that Canada can't be separated to deal with what's going on. With the US, we need to come together, so maybe that's why we're seeing that resurgence there. Conservatives never that popular in Quebec. So it's not too surprising to see the Liberals, back ahead of them and challenging the Bloc.
Okay, so is this thing about Canada being the 51st state a real thing? I've heard ups and downs. I've heard Trudeau say something. I heard, obviously, you hear Trump speaking. But is this a real thing? Can it happen? Like, what do you guys think?
Well, you never know when Trump says something if it's real or not.
Well, Justin Trudeau says it's a real thing. He means business. He said it in that hot mic incident or whatever it was recently, and that's what the
was that
media
intentional? That hot mic?
You're asking the correct questions, Adam.
I am.
Yes.
Sometimes I
do believe, just like you're saying, Trump is probably somewhat serious in the sense that he wants the power of the Canadian economy that we have not ever unleashed, I should say. The fact is, Canadians have not produced in the goods that they have, and I mean, we just recently seen steel and aluminum tariffs. The notion that he's doing this, we don't really know what the hell he's up to. Okay, like he's not communicating really well. Why
he communicates poorly, whether it's on purpose or not. It's very difficult to understand.
Regardless of that, he threatens with this notion that Canada should be the 51st state, and I kind of grasp the concepts. We are highly dependent on that country. If the U.S. was gone tomorrow, Canada would be a completely different nation. We would be a developing country that would suffer, right? Because we just do not have the goods and services and production that the U.S. is providing us, and the money that's coming in.
To some degree, though, we're allowing this, and we're choosing this.
Yes,
we're not choosing to try and stand on our own. And I think this is a moment in time where maybe we need to rethink that idea.
Yes, you're right, and that is the consensus that we're getting from the current Liberal Party, because you're right, Adam. They basically said this hot mic incident with Justin Trudeau because it's good news for the Liberals. It gets everything off of what they're saying, and it's getting them towards the leadership that is currently running the country. I think that's the reason that he said that. I don't know what your opinion is on it, but I would say the reason for this is to get people talking about the current Liberal leadership, get Mark Carney's ideas in there, because apparently he's the one. The savior. Get the current Liberal leader, Justin Trudeau, a little bit more oomph on his way out to say, like, I'm still dealing with this, I'm still in control, whatever. The thing I would suggest here is that, I guess, yes, Donald Trump would like to have Canada. Yeah, you know what? He says a lot of BS. He would like to have Canada as a state or something. I don't know how serious he is, but he most definitely wants us to be producing the oil, to produce everything that the Americans use so that they have more economic development, and it can basically be energy independent completely just between us and the US. I think that's ideally what he wants, and since our politicians aren't doing it, he's using the leverage that he has to say, yeah, we want to do these things, and maybe Canada would be better off. It's rallying Canadians together under one message to be a little bit more independent. Do you, Adam, think that that's a good thing or a bad thing? Because we saw Champlain, I believe it was, recently talking about how we need to develop pipelines across the country, and we need to do more electrical infrastructure and all that, right?
Yeah, suddenly these liberals have come up with this ingenious idea that we should be
Note the sarcasm.
we should be developing pipelines east-west. They're talking about transmission lines. Like, basically, what we need to do is we need to find a way to extract our resources and get them to our coasts.
Everything we've been saying and some conservatives have been saying in the previous government.
Like, I feel like a broken record, but we need to learn how to sell what we have here in Canada to the rest of the world. We can't keep just sitting here selling it all to the US and letting them bully us around.
And you know what? I think, this is just a theory I have, but I think the Americans realize this, not just Donald Trump. They realize that if Canada actually gets a foot in the ass and starts developing it from their threats, and even if they threaten to sell it to China or to the UK or whoever, they realize that that's not going to be the reality. The reality will be Canada will eventually start developing and pulling out those resources like they want, and it's going to go the easiest route, which is down through the current pipelines and infrastructure we have to the Americans, and they're going to get it just like they want.
And they'll keep getting it at steep discounts. And then every once in a while, they'll come and kick us around a little bit just to show us who's boss.
Yeah, because, I mean, we had to go through the tough work of having an actual leader that will negotiate with countries and get proper trade, and then we have to actually back that up.
Is that Mark Carney?
No, and it was not that Justin Trudeau, who basically just ended the conversation when we said Germany wanted to buy gas from us. He said, no, it's not possible.
LNG.
No business case, because he couldn't make it happen. And that's where we are at. I think in the long run, this conversation we're having is based around the 51st state thing. It's far too difficult for it to happen. It basically would require a collapse of the Canadian government in order for the population to want this to happen. It would be the most easiest way for it to happen, because we would have to basically vote it in and make it happen. It's not going to happen either that way, or it's going to happen with the Americans coming over with force
and take over.
And that's not going to happen either. It's going to happen with economic pressure, maybe. And basically, if I'm saying economic pressure is and resources is what the Americans really want, then that's what they're going to get, because at the end of the day, they're the easiest people to sell to. They're going to make us money, and there's nothing we can do about it, because, well, I'm not gonna say there's nothing we can do about it, but the reality is, at this time and with the current methods we've been using in Canada, there is nothing we can do. We need to develop. And Adam, turn on that broken record again and tell us why we need to develop.
We just need to get our act together. We need to stand on our own. We need to, we just need to learn how to trade with the rest of the world. We need to figure out what's important to defending our borders. And obviously they want us to take the Arctic seriously with what's going on up there. And right now we don't seem to take anything seriously. We won't build any sort of pipelines. We have all these little fantasy land reasons why we shouldn't develop any resources. We have ministers again that tell us we're not going to build roads anymore. Like we can't have any more of this. And I think like it's time to get these liberals out, get a conservative government in here that's saying they're going to do these things, give them the chance to do it, and then we can judge them on that when the next election comes along and decide if they've done what they said they're going to do, and if we should continue giving them the opportunity, or should we boot their ass out and pick someone else, right? But if we just continue down this path we've been going down, with the current Liberal government, and if it's been Mark Carney who's been calling some of the shots behind the scenes, if we continue down this path, this will get worse for us. Our economy will not grow. Our provinces will continue to bicker with each other, and we'll have a federal government that's basically shutting down real growth and preventing us from building wealth, and it just will not be great to have this happen.
I had popped up before because I was going to ask a question about
if
you thought he was trying to use economic pressure he was talking about, but you kind of covered that in your spiel. So that's why I kind of popped up out of nowhere and I say something and then it disappeared.
He is basically using economic pressure. That's what the tariffs are.
Essentially, yeah. But I was just kind of wondering if it's going to we come to a point where they're so steep or they're so much where we don't have a choice.
Yeah, I think you're right. They definitely can do that. Whether it's going to happen or not,
I don't know.
Pretty much, we're going to cave to whatever demands he eventually makes. Whether we're capable of making some of those demands is another scenario. Because if he's going to actually demand oil and gas pipelines, good luck getting that happening here in Canada. Bye-bye, Casper. Because we've already talked about how the production of that has never been a thing for like 10 years. I don't want to sound like a bummer here, but Casper's like, stop that conversation. Go back to the positive, you guys.
Well, all of a sudden, we have these liberals telling us that we need to do this. So, do you think they would actually do it if they somehow won another election?
What? I'm going to turn to Michael Lee and give him the last point of conversation here because...
Oh?
Yes, because people love to hear his opinion and the common approach that he takes when we talk about this matter.
Common, he called you common.
I know.
Yeah, he's a good perspective.
It's common folk.
At least once a week he does that.
Let's ask Michael Lee. Mike, I want to just phrase this question. Would you like to keep a liberal government in power that has made all these current decisions and we're living in a decade or so of their decisions? Or do you think these other conservatives that have given promise to us are a better option? And what do you think going forward? What should the people listening to this podcast really think of both those options? What is the positive between these two annoying situations we have with politics?
That's a loaded question.
I'm just saying. Who?
It was like 6 questions.
It was
loaded in there.
Well, start with the first one if you can remember what it is.
I don't, but
well, just have an opinion on something.
Basically about between
the
those two.
liberals and between the conservatives, it's tough. Like, I can't really give an answer on this because the liberals have promised so much. And
had the time to deliver.
I had time to deliver.
9 years.
But also things got worse in their time.
Yeah.
And then now we've got, I guess I have to call him Trump, in here, and who has worked with him so far, right? They know how he works. He's met with Trudeau and whatnot. Now we have this conservative government that wants to come in, has all these promises to make change, make things cheaper, make things more affordable. But how are they going to handle the Trump situation? It's almost like we are in this position where it's almost better for liberals to stay where they are because they've dealt with Trump. How do the conservatives know how to deal with him?
Have they dealt with him well, though?
Well, you know what I'm trying to say. Like they
I know what you're saying.
You're saying they have current
they have
experience.
experience dealing with him,
Yeah.
right?
And this is a
his demands.
common thought process that many Canadians may actually have.
Yeah.
I believe it is. Yes.
I do like to hear it. So the question becomes to me, how does any new government take place when they have to interact? And you know what? There's statistics on this matter. When you have two right-leaning governments, you have more production and more development between those countries, or whatever it is, provinces, federally or interprovincially, whatever it is. So how will Democrats and liberals deal with each other across the Canadian-American border? A lot better. So how will Americans, Republicans I should say, and conservatives deal with each other? Probably a lot better. It's the fact that they're on the same side of the spectrum. They'll have aligned intentions. I think, yes, they don't have the current experience, but there's a lot of intergovernmental leaders that aren't going to change over in the actual government. And you're probably going to have faster and better progress on this matter.
We should be careful, though, with what we say about, aligned intentions, because I wouldn't want to say that the Canadian Conservatives are aligned with a lot of the initiatives going on in the U.S. Because there's a lot of unpopular stuff going on down there that is maybe something that government shouldn't be sticking their nose into. And I think that in Canada, our government is less inclined to do that. And if we have a conservative government here, they're not going to be maybe spending their time on a lot of that kind of stuff. And they'll more look at, the fiscal issues that that we're plagued with, and hopefully look for those kind of solutions.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Adam. The reality is we are less concerned with the cultural measures, and we're more concerned with the actual economics here in Canada.
Economics.
Economics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
It's different emphasis.
The economics of the situation here in Canada, and I think that's the aligned intentions. It's the development of Canadian resources and the development of productions of gas, of hydro, having better tax policies, those kind of things. We don't have good development here in Canada for businesses. In America, businesses grow at a higher rate and they attract more business.
And they're taxed less.
Exactly. And Champlain was talking about how Canada is this new market, but he's not making anything actually attractive. So to go to back to the notion of whether or not liberals or conservatives are the actual party to deal with the Americans, I don't know if it really matters. I think the questions need to be asked of the media. What are the intentions Canadians have? And let's focus far less on what Trump is saying. Obviously, that's the politician's job. They will start the conversations with the guy, because that's ultimately the people with the authority. And us as Canadians just need to vote in our own intentions with the party that we so choose. I don't think it's a matter of having a concern of who is the best leader. It's who has the best policies. That's what I would encourage the listener to focus on. And
when it comes to policy, let's take a moment to just think again on what kind of policy the Liberals are talking about now. Like, they're talking about removing taxes, removing the carbon tax, or changing. Really, they're just going to change it and make it kind of worse. But they're saying, they're trying to say what the Conservatives are saying, which is flying in the face of a lot of the policy that they've been pushing for the last 9 years. So are we saying now that we think the Liberals will do an about face on 80% or more of the policy that they've spent the last almost decade pushing, and they're going to suddenly start to develop natural resources in Canada and work on getting us off the reliance of the U.S.? Like, they're suddenly just realizing this now, when it is, almost too late for us to make a quick pivot. I don't think that we can trust them to follow through on, flying in the face of their own policy. I don't think they'll do that. I think they'll pretend to do it, and they'll replace it with similar policy under a different name and continue down the same road with us. I think they haven't done a good job of dealing with Trump. They haven't done a good job of dealing with the U.S. and with tariffs. I know Trudeau has come out and he's been able to make a couple inspiring speeches in the last little while, but talking a lot of hot air has never been a problem for him. He's always been good at it. It's the follow through that he struggles with, and they're going to struggle with it again. And you can already see it when they're basically talking down all their own policy and trying to adopt the policy that the Conservatives have been pushing for a while, and then telling us that the Conservatives have no platform because they basically just stole it and are trying to use it for themselves now. I think it's very frustrating. I don't like when our media gets behind it and pushes it. I wish they would be more willing to point out the hypocrisy of the situation. But unfortunately, they're not. So people need to just maybe get a little bit more involved and look for these answers themselves.
Well, on that note, what do you guys think? Who's better to deal with Trump? Between the Liberals, between the Conservatives? Tell us down below what you guys think. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. We appreciate you guys.